Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Yellowjackets Hive. I am Medium Melanie here with,
And I'm Emily.
and today we are going to recap season 1 of Yellowjackets. Thought it was good timing ahead of season 2 coming next month in March. Of course, season 1 covered a lot of stuff. We're going to do our best to pick out the most important points so that way, we can have a good idea of the key focuses as we move into season 2.
Yes.
Before we start, we should mention, Emily, which one of the Yellowjackets cast members just celebrated a birthday?
Christina Ricci just turned 43 yesterday. So she's
Woohoo!
like right around the age of what they're supposed to be in the show, right?
Yes, that's right. And I'm also turning 43 this year, so I feel like I
Ooh.
really have a special, connection with this adult cast, especially Christina, given that we'll be the same age. Very
Yeah.
exciting. But yes, it does put them very close to the age that they're playing in the show. So I
Yeah.
think that adds a nice authentic quality to it. So happy birthday, Christina.
Yes.
Yes. And speaking of season 2 Yellowjackets, we are going to be hosting Yellowjackets Hive After Dark. We will be going live in the Hive immediately following new episodes of Yellowjackets starting on March 26th. We're going to do it in this format, which we love because fans can pop into the comments. You can ask questions live. We can answer them. We will have some spots if you'd actually like to join us on the feed. If that's something you're interested in, message us, yellowjacketshive@gmail.com. We'll keep a list and we will touch base closer to season 2 and when we do a Hive hangout, which will be fun. And we hope to do one of those around the full trailer release. So hopefully that's coming soon.
Yes.
Yes.
I was really counting on there being one yesterday during the Super Bowl. I'm kind of bummed.
I know, same. They had an ad during the Grammys, and so that really sparked my thing. Like, wow, the Paramount's got money for a Super Bowl spot, but we did not see one. But that still leaves plenty of opportunity coming up, leading up to the weeks of the premiere.
Maybe Valentine's Day?
Valentine's Day would be great. I feel
Yeah.
like that would be really on point. They could use that nice visual of one of the girls writing "I love you" in blood on the other one's
Yeah.
arm. That is really cute. And you know what? If they don't post that, that will be our Valentine's Day post. So thank you for
Yes.
the inspo, Showtime. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so without further ado, we are going to dive into our Yellowjackets Hive Season 1 recap. Yellowjackets, of course, is on Showtime, and the general description of the show, girl soccer players must survive a plane crash, the wild, and each other. In the mid-90s, a plane carrying a widely talented girls soccer team crashes in the Canadian wilderness, leaving the group of teenagers stranded for 19 long months. 25 years later, those who survived attempt to get on with their lives until the grim truth of what really happened threatens to surface.
Mm-hmm.
And, the first time I watched Yellowjackets, it wasn't what I was expecting. I was thinking more of the teen drama, the soccer, the high school,
Yeah.
but like they dove in right to the crazy stuff like towards the end of the pilot.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it had me hook, line, and sinker from
Mm-hmm.
episode 1, hands down.
Yeah. Same.
Yes. One overarching theme throughout the series we think that's covered in depth is the idea of trauma, right? So we're just going to talk about that right at the top. It's interwoven throughout the entire first series. There was a quote from Ashley Lyle. She said, "I feel like the only constant that we came across in terms of trauma is that everybody's experience is different. There is no right or wrong way to experience, process, or manifest traumatic experiences. We certainly tried to do some research. We want to be very respectful, but we were more interested in talking about examining felt experience as opposed to the clinical analysis of it. Hopefully, people feel there's truth in some way, shape, or form to how we're presenting it on the show. It's interesting to me that trauma has become this kind of catchphrase or buzzword. Everyone keeps sharing that Jamie Lee Curtis video from her Halloween Kills press tour. But I think trauma is as close to you can come to a universal experience, especially right now. We are all going through a collective trauma. You don't have to have been through a plane crash to experience trauma.
So true.
Yes. And I think that's very important, not even just to the show, but in real
Yeah.
life. We all have traumas. Emily, I've got a lot of trauma. You've got some trauma. We've all got
Mhm.
trauma. And I think what defines us is how we deal with them and how we present
Yeah.
ourselves in the midst of trauma. So
Yes.
again, I think Showtime does a really great job with that. So we'll talk more
Yeah.
about that with each character and how they're depicted.
Yeah.
But why don't we dive right into the pilot? Emily, what is the Showtime description of the pilot?
So, Showtime synopsis for the pilot says on the eve of a fateful flight, a championship high school girls soccer team celebrates by betraying one another. 25 years later, the survivors do their best imitations of well adjusted people.
Yes, imitations, I think, is an important word there. A couple of just fun little tidbits from the pilot. The crash we determined was around May 23rd, based on the clues that they gave us in the context of the show. The flight number was 2525. You never know when you're going to need that in a trivia question, so why not throw it in there? And another thing from the original pilot script was that Shauna was going to have another daughter, which meant Callie was going to have an older sister named Mandy, who we saw in some photos on the wall, family photos. So that did not come to fruition in the pilot. But it's interesting to see some of the differences between what was written and what actually happened.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes. In the opening scene, we see that pit girl sequence. Emily, tell us a little bit about the pit girl sequence, and then also one important question we have from something we saw during that.
So, we all know by now that the show opens up with a girl running through the snow, and it looks like she's in the wilderness where they've been stranded, obviously, and she's running, she trips. She's running down a pathway that's surrounded by trees. When she trips, she gets up and she hears these like animal noises, which we've deduced are being made by the other girls based on what we've seen throughout the whole season. And she hears those noises. It looks like she's like almost like retching in pain to me, like when she's like bent over. And then she gets up, takes off. But before she starts running, you see the talisman all like lining the pathway that she's running down. And it also looks like Coach Ben's crutch is one of those items that are adorning the pathway. So is that to show that like he doesn't make it?
I mean, shout out to Reddit user Palpitation Adorable too. We did pull this photo from them, but I mean, you clearly can see there's a man-made crutch hanging there. Like that's not just a stick found in nature. It looks like there's the duct tape or something. So for me, that means, Coach does not make it out of the wilderness.
No. And I mean, like we've talked about this like a bunch of times, like with this show, you kind of have to suspend disbelief for some things because you know that some things that happen aren't logical and wouldn't work in the real world. But like Ben surviving is something that nobody thinks is going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, he's a great character. The girls are very lucky to have him, as a leader, before things get a little crazy and he loses his authority. But I mean, we love Steven Kruger as an actor, and we're interested to see what happens with him and his boyfriend because they did cast Paul, his boyfriend, excuse me, who's a writer. So we will see him in a few episodes in season 2, which we suspect will be in a dream, flashback, hallucination type of situation.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yes, Mark, in the comments, 2525 was Shauna's safe code. You were right.
Yes, absolutely. And hey, you know what? Welcome to everybody in the comments. We've got Bored Stuff. We've got 7D, Mark O'Brien, Dark Empire. Dark Empire. Oh my God, you're super sweet. I've been looking forward to the show since last week's episode. The recap makes me even more excited for another rewatch of season 1 to prepare for the new season. Well, thank you for that, Dark Empire. We are so glad that you're here.
Yes.
Yes. So continuing on in the pilot, just, for a quick synopsis of what happened, we see the Yellowjackets in 96 after we get over the show open with the pit girl scene. The girls are practicing. Thaisa tackles Allie, who's a freshman, and her leg breaks. There was some discussion about it beforehand. Not all the girls were involved with it, but that leg breaking for me, Emily, like the sound and noise of it,
Mhm.
like, eek, that was
Yeah.
quite a way to open their soccer practice and
Yeah.
kind
That
of
was a
set the
way to open the show.
I
Like,
mean, right?
they did
Oh my
not shy
goodness.
away from the gore, like, right away, because that bone, like, clearly, like, just, like, breaks right through her skin. It's so gross.
It's so gross. And, of course, then Misty, who we love to call MFQ, Misty fucking Quigley, comes over and, tries to do her thing with her first aid training, and it doesn't work because she's trying to put pressure on it. And, when there's a bone sticking out, generally, like, don't put pressure on it. Just a tip. I mean,
Yeah.
anyway. And then there's a bonfire that evening as well. The girls go to a bonfire, and Shauna says that Allie can no longer travel to Seattle to participate in the tournament because of her injury. Shauna tries to start a fight with Thaisa, but is then stopped by Jackie. And so, what goes down during that little argument situation?
For when they get into that, like, altercation, I found that really interesting too, Thaisa and Shauna, because that's, like, the only time that you see them argue throughout the whole first season. Like, they were very much on the same page. They were buddy buddy when they were out in the wilderness, but for some reason, like, what Thaisa does, like, really, really gets to Shauna and really
Shauna,
bothers her.
she calls her a sociopath,
Mhm.
which is interesting because I think that title could fit some of the other players as well. But that is interesting, just given we also see Shauna and Ty, very friendly in the adult timeline. So that
Yeah,
is out of character for them, and goes to show that something strengthened their bond while they were out there.
yeah. But Jackie gathers all of the Yellow Jackets together and she makes them all stand in a line and she says, I want you to each go down the line and tell every other girl on this team one nice thing about each other. And at least I've always thought that what they said was really important. Like, she points out Thaisa's determination, like, she admires Thaisa's determination, and Thaisa's determination to find help, like, almost ends up getting Van killed because their expedition to find help just goes so south and it goes so wrong for so many reasons. And then she goes to Van and tells Van that her smile makes her happy every time she sees her. And Van's face literally gets ripped off when the wolf attacks her. She tells Laura Lee that she admires Laura Lee's faith. And Laura Lee's faith is what leads her to fly the plane to try and find help. And we all saw how that ends up. Like, she ends up blowing up. So that doesn't work out very well for her either.
Does not.
No, Natalie is the only one that, like, I wasn't able to, like, make sense of, in the sense, like, what she says goes into their roles in the wilderness. Like, she says that Natalie very much doesn't care what others think about her and she's very much herself. And that does, like, she does act like that in the wilderness, but it's not the same. It didn't have the same effect as the other three did, I don't think. The things that she said about each of them.
Right. I would agree with that. And, the reason why Jackie's the one, kind of giving this pep talk is because earlier in the episode, we see Coach Martinez essentially telling Jackie, look, you're the one who has the influence. You're
Yeah.
the one that has the power. Essentially, she's like the queen bee at that point. Right.
Yeah.
And we see the evolution of Jackie as a character and her, fall from the crown, if you will, throughout the series. And then, of course, it culminates with her death in episode 10.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of like where we start, where we finish. We should do a side by side with that Jackie one. That would be good.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's see. Also in that episode, we learn about some of the girls' families. We know that Lottie's dad, for instance, is the one that charters the plane that goes down. And there was a line of dialogue in there, that we thought was maybe important towards the end there. Thank you, Mr. Matthews. What do you think about that? Does that hold any meaning, Emily?
I mean, the way that they say it, like, it makes me think that, like, this isn't the first time he's done something like this for the team. Like, I think Lottie's dad very much equates money with affection. So I think that he inserts himself in the team in that way, like, multiple times. Like, I don't think that him chartering the plane is the first time that he's done something for them.
Right. That makes sense. And, Lottie's dad definitely seems to be the most well off of
Yeah.
all of the people. We also see Thaisa's family, which actually looks like kind of the most normally functioning family, I would say. I don't know
Yeah.
if that means there's like more under the surface, but it seemed very loving and, have fun on your trip. Like,
Yeah.
give me a kiss goodbye, all the family gathered around. For me, that seemed to be the most like normal family situation.
Yeah,
Um,
especially compared to, like, you see Van, like, smacking her mom in the face to wake her up to take her to the bus or to the plane or whatever, and Natalie, like, doesn't have a good home life either. We see her, like, smoking a cigarette out of the trailer window before she leaves. Like, she's kind of in the same boat as Van, I feel like, when it comes to her relationship with her parents.
Absolutely. And, kind of same with Ty. We see, same with Nat. We see her, at her trailer. We know that there's some dysfunction there. We learn, about Nat and her dad and their relationship and how that
Yeah.
plays in. We saw Laura Lee playing in her bedroom. We saw Lottie's maid giving her a meal and some medication.
Mhm.
We saw Shauna in her bedroom with her brown acceptance letter.
Mhm.
We had seen Jackie packing. And then, the Martinez goodbye, which is something that we'll cover when we actually talk to Kevin in a couple weeks on February 27th. But that Martinez goodbye was awkward and I think
Yeah.
really sets the table for something dysfunctional there. We don't know what yet, but
Yeah.
they did that for a reason. The husband and wife looked very uncomfortable. Maybe he's cheating on her. Some people have been saying, maybe Coach Martinez and Coach Ben were having an affair. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I don't know that they needed that many condoms for that reason, Ben,
Yeah.
that is. But anyway, so we get a little bit of context from some of the characters. Oh, and let's not forget, we saw Misty sitting in the backyard of what looks like a very nice house watching a rat in the pool. Which is probably going to drown. We don't know if she put the rat in there or it just happened to be in there and she was watching it. But either way, it definitely gives us a little insight into the mind of MFQ.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Also in the pilot, we get a little more context on some of the adults. We meet Jessica Roberts. Tell
Mhm.
us a little bit about how Jessica Roberts enters the picture and what it seems like she's up to in the pilot.
So Jessica Roberts enters the picture when she approaches Shauna first, right? That's who
Yes.
we see her approach first.
Yep.
And she comes to Shauna's house under the ruse that she's a reporter, and that she wants to interview her. She tells Shauna that she has a book deal that Shauna can be a part of to tell her story. And Shauna pretty much tells her to fuck off. Like, she is not interested. Like, she tells her, like, I don't talk to reporters. Like, this isn't something I'm going to do. But for some reason, Shauna humors her and allows her to come in, and they get into a discussion about what happened to them. And Shauna says to Jessica Roberts, I know what you want to hear, but the truth is the plane crashed. A bunch of my friends died, and the rest of us starved, scavenged, and prayed for 19 months until they finally found us. Which always really stuck out to me because she says starved, scavenged, and prayed. And prayed, I thought could be either like you're praying to God or like you're being preyed upon. Yeah, exactly. Like there could be dual meaning to it, especially in this situation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, she says, a bunch of her friends died, but we've only seen really 2 deaths so far. So,
Mhm.
the other thing is we are expecting a lot more deaths in season 2, which is also something that the showrunners have confirmed. There's going to be a lot more characters, a lot
Yeah.
more deaths. And then, are they going to make it out of the woods in season 2 is another question, like, which we
Yeah.
don't know. I'm guessing probably not. I think
No.
it looked like Shauna was still pregnant at the end
Mhm.
of season 1, pretty pregnant. So I'm going to say, or at the end of filming of season 2, I should say, in the pictures, even though they don't film in order, my gut says we probably won't see the baby or lack thereof a baby until season 3. So
Yeah, I agree.
we'll have to see how that goes. We also see adult Natalie in the pilot. Now, she is in rehab. Something we've established is that we know Ty was paying for her rehab. So Ty knew where Natalie was, which could
Mhm.
be significant because we know that Natalie receives a postcard.
Mhm.
And for her to receive a postcard, whoever sent it needs to know where she is.
Yeah.
Did Ty have the postcard sent along with this whole deploying Jessica Roberts as her watchdog, or did somebody else send the postcards? This is a mystery. We do not think it was Jeff. We know that Jeff, was the blackmailer, but we don't believe that he sent the postcards.
No.
But Shauna didn't get a postcard either that we know of. So, that's also mysterious. I don't
Yeah.
know what that means. But again, the whole postcard thing is quite a mystery. But Nat, again, she's in rehab, wearing a purple shirt, by the way, which is interesting because we know that Lottie's cult colors are purple based on the purple scrubs they were wearing. Just a really quick note on the cult. We were trying to come up with some names for the cult. We know they employ a symbol in the color purple. The purple is a color of spirituality and imagination. It inspires us to divulge our innermost thoughts, which enlightens us with the wisdom of who we are and encourages spiritual growth. It's often associated with royalty and luxury, and its mystery and magic sparks creative fantasies. And born to be purple means born to be royalty. So, just a little side note on the cult colors. I think we see the purple, here on Nat's sweater in rehab. She's wearing it again in season 2 when she's with Lottie. We see Misty wearing purple in season 2. So, I've got to say, I think the purple thing is definitely something that will come into play with the cult. So anyway, so Natalie's in rehab. She's saying, after she got rescued, she lost her purpose. It's been heavily speculated that Natalie did something essential to their rescue, and maybe like that was her purpose. And now that she's rescued, she got her friends out. Like, what else does she have to live for, right?
Yeah.
And, she talks about keeping the tiger in the cage, which is interesting because we know that the pit is actually a tiger trap. So I feel that reference to a tiger, also alludes to the tiger trap that was out in the wilderness that, where Pit Girl lie.
Yeah.
So, goodness gracious. Dark Empire mentioned colors do play a huge role in the show, especially that red with the spill. That's another color that we see all the time. But yeah, I'm interested to see how the purple comes into play. Let's see. So what else from the pilot? Shauna and Ty had a conversation. Tell us a little bit about what Shauna and Ty discussed.
So this is at the very end of the episode. We see Shauna go into her safe and she gets out, which I think it's a burner phone that she takes out of the safe, and she calls Ty on, which I still don't understand that, because why so secretive when you reach out to her? But then from every interaction from that point on, there's no level of secrecy anymore. Like, at least it doesn't appear that way. Like, it looks like they're just using their regular cell phones to be in contact with one another. And it just like why in the first place are they not allowed to be in contact? That's just weird. Like, you go through a traumatic experience with somebody, you're bonded for life, like in a way that no one else can understand. So it doesn't make sense to me why they don't want people thinking that they're in contact with one another. But Shauna says to Ty, when they have this meeting at the diner, she says, "We agreed, say no more than we have to, stay out of the public eye." And she says this because we all know that Taissa is running for senator, and that's not a very good way to keep yourself out of the spotlight, to run for political office. That is the last thing you should do if you don't want people asking questions about you. So that, like, to me, that's weird. They had this spoken agreement. So why now are you allowed to go against it and do what you want to do when for the last 25 years you've been so afraid of these secrets getting out?
It definitely does not fully add up, so it is interesting, unless, the cult is funding Ty's political campaign and, they're in her pocket and this is all a bigger picture part of that. So,
Yeah.
so that's interesting. So episode 1, the pilot, we see a very like normal teen girl situation, right? Like
Yeah.
this picture's interesting because we see the girls taking a knee, kneeling down, and it looks like Coach Ben actually is missing a leg or two
Mhm.
legs in that picture already. So there's some nice foreshadowing, which we see throughout. I think there's a lot of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
We had Ro Rusak on to discuss the Cannibal Council and fairy tale archetypes, and she talked about like a metaphorical portal where you're all in this normal life, you're in high school, you're teenagers, and then all of a sudden you're like transported through this metaphorical portal where like real life goes out the window. So you're taking
Mhm.
this like fictional account and almost like transporting into like a more mythological or fairy tale situation, which I really appreciated and thought that was
Mhm.
a really interesting perspective to
Yeah.
look through that fairy tale lens. So if you haven't caught that episode yet on the Cannibal Council, we highly suggest you check it out. It's definitely got some interesting points about hierarchy and archetypes and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
definitely check it out. Just a couple other takeaways from the pilot. One of my more disturbing things is every time Shauna is masturbating to her boyfriend, her Callie's boyfriend, like that really grosses me out, right? Like I think it's like pretty predatory. I think it definitely shows Shauna's mindset. And also in a way, it's like she's stunted at that high school age where like
Yeah.
she never grew up past being a teenager. And I think that also manifests in the way that she interacts with Adam throughout, right? Like they're
Mhm.
acting like teenagers, they're like pretending they're buying liquor underage, they're jumping off bridges, like very young person activities, not
Yeah.
as much something you'd see a 40 something year old woman doing. So I think that first thing with Shauna masturbating to a high schooler definitely gives us an indication about her trauma. And
Oh yeah.
again, lots of trauma throughout the entire first season with each character in their own different ways. And, that's an early one that we see with Shauna. So just a note that I think that's super creepy. And I
Wouldn't
think
it
so every
be
time.
wouldn't it be so disturbing if she used Callie's vibrator?
Oh my God, Emily? Oh my God, I like almost just threw up in my mouth. Mothers and daughters should not share vibrators. That is very
No.
awkward. I hope she did not. Oh my God. Like, oh my God, take that picture out of my head. Take that picture out of my head. Okay,
She
moving on.
clearly has boundary issues.
I mean, she
So,
definitely has boundary issues. And, if Callie's about to go take Jackie's like dead soccer uniform out of the closet, I mean, I guess what's to stop Shauna from like reaching and grabbing Callie's vibrator? But like, let's hope that that didn't happen.
yeah.
Please. Okay.
Yeah.
Whew, okay. The other tidbit we talked about was the coach telling Jackie about her influence, which kind of like foreshadows her eventual downfall in the wilderness. And then just a little 90s moment that I loved. Lottie refers to Allie as Kelly Kapowski.
Mhm.
I loved Saved by the Bell, and I love 90s references. I love 90210. I love all of them, which I appreciate. Jackie Taylor, the name of Jackie's mom, was the name of Kelly's mom in 90210. As I digress, I just wanted to point out I love the 90s stuff. The Caboodle, we see, of course, Co-Ed Naked, which we have our collaboration coming very soon with them. Actually, we're meeting with them after this. And then the 90s music, just really quick from the pilot. The bangers like drew me into the show. Love
Yeah.
the 90s music. We have Today from the Smashing Pumpkins, Shoop from Salt and Peppa, Let Me Find Out from Post Neg, Miss World Whole, Good Vibrations, Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch, Supernova, Liz Fair, Snow, Informer, What If, Dory Soul, Counting Backwards, Throwing Muses, Down by the Water, PJ Harvey. Love that song. And Never Tear Us Apart, Paloma Faith. I feel like the pilot has the bulk of all of the amazing 90s music, but there's
Yeah.
more to come. Of course, Montel Jordan's This Is How We Do It dance sequence in the cabin is also an amazing 90s
Yeah.
nostalgia moment. So I
I
just had,
love the Shoop in the locker room. That's like my favorite.
oh my
That's
God.
like my go-to karaoke song.
Yes. Oh my God. I love, love, love it. Okay. Let's move on to episode 2, which is titled F Sharp. The description: the teens get their bearings as Misty finds hell on earth quite becoming. In the present, revenge, sex homework, and the policeman, formerly known as Goth. So let's pick apart maybe like 3 or 4 of the important things from this episode. Starting with, it's the first time we see the symbol in the teen timeline after
Mhm.
Coach Martinez falls from the tree. So that's definitely something important to note. First
Yeah.
time we're seeing the symbol. And Misty leverages her first aid training pretty heavily in this episode. Why don't you walk us through how the leg situation went?
Oh, okay. So she she hears Coach Ben screaming, and she takes it upon herself to be the one to go and find him and help him. And that's when they discover him trapped underneath was it a wing of the airplane
Is
that
it
he
a
was
wing
trapped under?
or some piece of shrapnel? Yeah.
Either way, it was a really big piece of the plane. And you couldn't see his leg like below his knee, and he just kept asking, like, is my leg okay, can you lift it? I was surprised that they could even lift that up. I mean, I know there were a lot of them, but that looked like it was really heavy.
Yeah.
They lifted it, they pulled him out, and his leg is just like completely mangled from the knee down, like real bad. Like there's no saving that thing. She takes it upon herself to go grab the axe from the cockpit, and she comes back over and she just chops that thing straight off.
Oh my God, straight up amputation. She cauterizes it. It's pretty hard to watch. We have the image with like the blood all over her face, which is like very, very MFQ.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when we really start to see like the dire situation, like when, we have bodies impaled and in trees and people just losing their legs, like, shit's getting real out there. And this
Yeah.
is like day one, and they've got 19 months to go, which
Yeah.
is insane.
Yeah.
Um, so yes, and in this episode, we also, have Coach Martinez, falls from the tree. So that is a really sad moment. Laura Lee's kind of like looking up, and some blood starts dripping down on her. So that was kind of an alarming way to find out, that there's a body up in the tree. The black box plays into this episode as well. Misty overhears a couple of the girls saying how important Misty is, and she destroys the black box, which again, it probably wouldn't actually help them get rescued, as we learned from our FAA expert Sohal, your friend Emily. But it's the intent behind it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that none of them would have known that would have had no impact on their rescue. So what would have mattered to them was the fact that Misty did what she did. Like Misty's intentions were to keep them there because she felt special. And if I were one of those girls and I found that out, like I don't know what I would do to her.
I mean, it's definitely one of the bad things she does, but there's so many that it
Mhm.
is hard to choose. But I do think the intent of destroying the black box is maybe one of the worst.
Yeah.
Aside from like the poisoning and the killing and the almost like, molestation. So
Yeah.
got a few things going on there. In the present timeline in this episode, Shauna and Jeff were kind of introduced to the behind the scenes of their marriage. They're in therapy, and the
Mhm.
therapist gives them some sex homework to, try some role playing and see how that goes for them. And like the first goes a little bit awkward.
Yeah.
It's a little bit awkward.
It was
Um,
so funny too, because when the therapist asks them like if they're willing to do it, like Jeff is like, yes, like absolutely. And Shauna's like, no, no way.
Yeah, it takes a little warming up, I think, for her to get into the idea. But in the same episode, Shauna also meets Adam. So
Mhm.
this stranger rear ends her car, and he gives her number on her arm, and Shauna's pretty standoffish at this point. Like she has no interest in him, but
Yeah.
there's like a little undercover flirtation going on, and obviously Adam becomes a key character in season 1, so that introduction is big.
Yeah.
Couple things we can say definitively about Adam. He's not Javi. That has been confirmed. Adam is not Javi, even though the showrunners did for a while maybe decide they were going to explore that option, which would explain, I think, why they look so much alike, why technically the age could work, maybe why Adam has that little carved wolf in his apartment, but Adam is not Javi.
Yeah.
But again, the tattoos and the comment about the cabin in the Poconos, like I still, okay, maybe it's just the failed red herring from him being Javi, but I just still think there's something highly sus about that. I can't get over it.
No, you don't, knowing the trauma that somebody's been through, you don't ask them if they want to go spend a weekend in the environment that they were traumatized in.
Yeah, no, that's probably the last thing you would do.
No.
We also see Natalie holding Misty at gunpoint in this episode, which is probably like one of my favorite quotes, I would say, in the whole thing. But setting the table for that first, Misty was out on a date and she's coming back with the date. And Emily, are people speculating that maybe Misty might be up to no good with some of these dudes?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's so much speculation that, especially considering the room that she has in her basement, like that her goal is to go on these dates with these men and she lures them back to her house and she either kidnaps or kills them and keeps them in her basement, like we see with Jessica Roberts.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something there, and this particular date, she kind of tricks him to coming inside, and
Mhm.
she uses this line on him like, "Oh, I see. It's because you think I'm ugly that he doesn't want to come in." But we hear a very similar line again later on when she says it to Coach Ben when
Mhm.
she's a teenager and asked him to attend Doom coming with her. So is this like her go-to? Like she plays like this, oh, poor me, I'm so ugly, everybody feel bad for me, like wah, 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 right? But hey,
Yeah.
maybe it works. Maybe it works. The guy comes inside and unfortunately, Nat is there. And what does Nat say to Misty?
Hello, Misty, you crazy fucking bitch.
Love that. Love that mug by Showtime. You can get it in Showtime shop, by the way. Don't sleep on that. Yeah, so that puts a little damper on the date. And
I loved her date's reaction too. Like as soon as she says that, like he's like, "Okay, I'm out."
yeah, I probably don't need to be here anymore. And then it's just interesting, like what happens between Nat and Misty out in the wilderness that prompted Nat to go straight from rehab, fly there, get the gun, and then go to Misty's. Like, what happens? Like, what did she find out about Misty? What did Misty do? Were they on opposite sides? Like, what is going on there?
Yeah, I definitely think that there has to be something else that happens. Like Misty's done plenty of crazy stuff, but I feel like something had to happen directly between Misty and Natalie to make Natalie feel this way towards her. And I keep going back to Coach Ben because Natalie and Coach Ben developed this bond out there. And they, like, you see it in Doom Coming when they have that conversation about Travis and Natalie, and like he's trying to be there for her and be support for her. So that makes me think that maybe she resents Misty because Misty might kill him or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely could be. It is not out of the realm. And then, Nat does discover that Misty also received one of the postcards. So,
Mhm.
Nat received the postcard. She wanted to check and see if Misty did. She did. Um, Again, Shauna did not receive the postcard. We haven't discovered that part yet. But also, is the gun that Natalie has the same one from the wilderness? Like, did she take it back from the wilderness? Did she keep it in her storage all that time? Is it the same gun or not? What do you think?
It looks exactly like the gun that she has out there. I just can't figure out how in the world would she get the gun from the wilderness back to civilization, like as a teenager. Like why would
Right.
they let a teenager just take a gun with them for no reason? Like unless she grew like attached to the item or something like that. But um some people think that it's like a replica, but I feel like it would be more interesting if it was the actual gun.
Oh my God, that would be incredible. I cannot
Yeah.
wait to find out if it was or not, like when we see them finally get rescued.
Yeah.
Um, a couple more things from F Sharp. Um, Natalie and Misty then embark on their road trip to go see Travis. And Thaisa is concerned about the disturbing drawings that her son Sammi has been making. Oh, and Misty also gets bullied in this episode. We see her a
Mhm.
few years before now, or before 1996. She's on her lips phone, and some girls are calling her to bully her. And that's when she delivers the line, "Opinion is the wilderness between knowledge and ignorance," which I love.
Mhm.
And, there's just so much truth to that quote and so many things in life. And I
Yeah,
just celebrate that every day. So, there's two sides to every story. And, you know,
for
that's
sure.
just how it goes. Yes. So, let's see what else from this episode. Um, Adam says to Shauna, "You don't seem like somebody who plays by the rules," which I think is another telling quote about the
Mhm.
type of person Shauna is, because
Mhm.
clearly the rules went all out the window when they were in the wilderness. And I don't think that she's ever gained a sense of control or like normalcy back in her life. So,
I agree.
yes. Let's see, what other notes did we have here? We mentioned the first time we see the symbol in the teen timeline is after Coach falls from the tree. And then we also asked, is Lottie afraid of what will happen when she's off her meds? That's a discussion that we had before as well, like whether or not how many she brought with her. Was she having some of these visions before she was on the meds? Yes, because we saw the accident that she screamed at in the back seat,
Mhm.
similar to how they filmed it with Sammi in the back seat. So there's almost like this thing where maybe Sammi becomes like the new Lottie in terms
Yeah.
of being like the seer or the shaman. So but they're showing us that Lottie does not have enough medicine, so that will definitely factor into her mental state and the decline of things in the wilderness
Yeah.
and the hierarchy and how they end up getting there. So yes, that is F Sharp. And the next episode up is episode 3, The Dollhouse. The Yellowjackets debate the merits of probably dying while staying put or probably dying while looking for shelter. Thaisa navigates a dirty attack ad.
Mhm.
So they're 3 days in at this point on episode 3, and it looks like Ty convinces the group to hike to a nearby lake. And the group then eventually discovers the abandoned cabin and a dead body in the cabin,
Mhm.
which is interesting that this cabin is out there so uninhabited in the mysterious woods with a body in it.
Lottie also says, like, right when they first get to the cabin, like, I don't even know if they've gone inside yet. Like, I just have a bad feeling about this place. So from the minute that Lottie lays eyes on that cabin, like, she has reservations about it for some reason. And at this point, Lottie is off her medication. So I think that factors into it, because the last time we see her taking those pills is when they're all still near the plane wreckage. Like, they show her with the pills in her hand, and we don't see them again after that. So I think that that was kind of to show that this is the beginning of like Lottie's visions, if you want to call them that.
Right. And Shauna also noticed that Lottie was taking her meds and doesn't even comment on it at all. Like, so Shauna knows that she's on the meds and probably realizes that eventually she will not have enough. But Shauna doesn't really seem to mention it to the group. And I'm curious too, if did the rest of the group know she was on meds, going into this, or was it just discovered out there? Because, she may not want people to know, or maybe
Yeah.
they did know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Because they obviously pick up on the fact that her behavior changes, but I don't know if they pick up on the fact that it has anything to do with her being medicated.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Other key points in this episode, in 2021, Ty's political opponent, Phil Bathurst, airs a campaign ad insinuating that she's a cannibal. Not good for her campaign.
Yeah.
Taissa, her concerns for Sammi grow after he purposely hurts a child on the playground. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that moment is really when like things start to go downhill between Simone and Ty, because
Yeah.
they clearly have different reactions to their son's
Mm-hmm.
behavior. So, this kind of sets in motion the demise of Ty and Simone and, really what's going on with Sammi. So,
Yeah.
and as we know, things progress and escalate. So, we'll cover those as we get to it. So Shauna also follows Adam to a hotel. She sees Adam, spots him with another woman. And then Shauna and Adam are later shown to go into a hotel room together. Meanwhile, Misty and Natalie find Travis's dead body at a ranch and conclude someone murdered him. Whew. And what was the alias he was going by? It was John Garcia,
Yeah.
correct?
Yep.
John Garcia. Yep.
I have so many questions about that. The fact that he was going by an alias, because like when Natalie approaches Kevin about finding out about his toxicology report, like, does Kevin look under Travis's real name or does he look under his alias? And if it is his alias, how did Kevin not realize that that wasn't Travis's name on the file, because he knew Travis?
Right. I mean, one thing we haven't discussed, is it possible he went into witness protection for some reason? I mean,
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like he would have been more protected. Like there would have been more maybe secrecy or like, I don't know, a handler or something like that.
Yeah.
But to totally change your name, like it's pretty difficult and official
Yeah.
and takes paperwork and there's a paper trail for it. So
It takes a lot of work to disappear.
it does. And, Travis successfully did it, but
Mm-hmm.
not for long because obviously he got murdered,
Mm-hmm.
which is not great. And when Misty and Nat arrive at Travis's house, it's been theorized, as you mentioned, that Misty's the one who calls the cops after they break into Travis's. So why do you think that she would do that?
The only reason I can make sense as to why she would do that is if she was still like affiliate, like if Lottie is this bad person that killed Travis, then maybe Misty is still somehow affiliated with her, and she did it as a way to like buy time for Lottie to set whatever plan she had in motion, and by getting them arrested, that gave her the opportunity to get to Travis before Natalie could get to Travis and to kill him.
Right. And, another question was Misty texting Kevin when her and Natalie are on their road trip to find Travis. Because,
Yeah.
she was doing that pretending to be Nat, which is so strange, but not strange for Misty, apparently. I mean, Misty really works hard first, even to get on this road trip, because she sabotages Nat's car,
Mm-hmm.
forcing Nat to drive with her. And of course it's funny because they talk about like the show tunes and listening to things in the car, and then Misty comes back with jerky and Nat makes the comment about jerky, really, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that just speaks to the foreshadowing of the cannibalism as well.
Yeah.
And also think it's odd that Misty is eating jerky when she used to eat people, because
Yeah.
you'd think that would shy you off of that a little bit, but
Yeah.
maybe not. um Another line of dialogue from episode 3: wolves can kill anything if the pack is big enough. And that is said by Coach Ben. Um, it seems to be like he's hinting at the fact that, you know, eventually the girls are going to hunt each other like wolves. It could have to do with like hunting strategies of wolves and how they end up hunting each other. But also, we see wolf symbolism quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the most notable is Van getting her face torn off by wolves,
Yeah.
which is alarming.
Yeah.
Yes, and Ty sees the wolves. She hallucinates them at different points. Javi carves that wolf for Shauna. Adam has that carved wolf. Van gets attacked by wolves. We have the wolf quote. So there's a lot of wolves. I would imagine that one of these adult cannibal council mask wearing people where I think I have a picture of them, maybe not. I would think one of them is wearing a wolf mask. Did Marie tell us that one of the teens was wearing wolf skins as well? I believe Ty.
She said, I know she said Misty was wearing a beaver on her face, and I think she said that Misty was wearing a wolf on her body too, but
Okay.
she might have said that Ty was wearing a wolf too.
Right. Somebody was wearing a wolf, though. So the
Yeah.
wolf symbology, just another one of the things, that we see as a running theme throughout. Same with things like spill. We hear and see that a bunch of times too.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. Tell Nat she was right. Back to that note at Travis's house. So Misty uses her citizen detective skills and does that thing where you rub a pencil on a piece of paper and it will show the last thing that was written there, like we've seen in lots of classic cartoons and detective shows. So tell Nat she was right. What do you make of that note?
Well, for the longest time, like I was reading it like tell Natalie that Natalie was right. Like the she in the note meant Natalie. But now I'm like second guessing that and thinking maybe the she might not have been Natalie at all. Maybe it was referring to someone else. Maybe it is referring to Natalie, and maybe it just meant like tell Natalie that she was right, that Lottie's still around. Lottie is still a threat. And he was hiding because he didn't want Lottie to find him. That would make the most logical sense to me.
Absolutely. And then, there are some pretty sus things regarding Travis's death scene as well.
Mhm.
We see a pendulum set up much like the one that the girls used in the seance, like with the knife that they used.
Yeah, his body is
Um,
the pendulum. I'm convinced that his body is the pendulum.
yes. Yep. I think that is absolutely like a metaphor for that. We see the candle wax on the
Mhm.
ground, which, is interesting. And of course, then we see Misty, like, then later able to connect all these dots from the death scene. Like I keep saying, like a survivor puzzle. How else could you ever arrange those photos like that,
Yeah,
come up with the symbol, unless you knew what was going to be there? I
yeah.
mean, I cannot see that making sense.
No.
And, another thing is Jessica Roberts admits to Misty in the basement that she was there at some point, right? When
Mhm.
was she there? Why was she there? We suspect that she got him that bottle of liquor, which I believe was like, what, halfway gone? Or
Mhm.
at least somewhat gone. So maybe she wasn't there super recently. It looks like he had enough time to like drink that liquor. But also, Jessica Roberts found him. So how did she even find him?
Yeah.
With the fake name and everything, like there's got to be some third degree connection somewhere. Maybe Javi's alive and she tracked him down from there. There's always the possibility that Javi's the one that emptied the bank account because he's a family member.
Mhm.
So Javi's still a big mystery.
Yeah, one of the biggest ones.
And another note, Ty had said to Natalie about Travis is he disappeared on you for a reason. But like, what is that reason? They seem to have had a pretty good thing going. Something I would like to see is more context and history of Nat and Travis communicating with each other within the 25 years, so we
Yeah.
know like how involved were they? Did they chat on the phone once a month? Did they text here and there? Like, did they see each other? Did they ever relapse together? I would really like to know.
I feel like they have to show us like what happened between Natalie and Travis post rescue up until like where we're introduced to in the storyline, because I feel like that's important to who Natalie is as a
Yes,
person. So I
absolutely.
can't see them like, and not only that, like I know there was like a scene that they cut out of season 1 where they showed adult Travis like walking out of his house. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
It was shown in the trailer, but it was never shown in the show. So maybe we will see more of adult Travis in season 2. I'm hoping anyways.
Yeah, I hope so too. Gosh, that would be really nice. I love answers, Emily. I love answers,
Yeah.
As we progress through our Yellowjackets season 1 recap, we are going to move on to episode 4, which is Bear Down. The girls play with guns to determine who is the most responsible. Natalie untangles a lifetime of piecing together broken men. And Thaisa greets the rich.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and just to give a quick like rundown of some of the action in this, and then we can dive a little bit deeper. The group finds a gun with a large supply of ammo inside the cabin, and they experiment with shooting. It is determined under Coach Ben's supervision that Natalie and Travis prove to be the best suited to handle the firearm. And then that kind of starts Natalie and Travis like bonding together. This is the first time we really see them, coming together. And I think that's important, and it really sets the tone for their relationship, in the wilderness throughout from here on out.
Yeah, absolutely.
They do end up hunting a deer, and they also, this is when they recover the ring from Travis's dad, which was like really emotional. Travis goes back to get the ring from his dad, and they he can't do it. It's like pretty emotional. So
Yeah.
Nat is the one who ends up actually like digging it out and getting the ring, which I really think shows her strength of character and also
Mm-hmm.
the compassion, she has for Travis, who's going through this giant trauma, losing his dad. He's still got his brother out there, but he's angry about it. He was angry at Javi for keeping the chewing gum, and
Mm-hmm.
this anger is now maybe turning into more sentiment because he does, want that ring and has Natalie get it for him. So
Yeah. It makes me wonder if the ring will come into play in the future, like we see Jackie's necklace too, because I know that he wanted to get it for Javi, but it's another token of somebody that died. And between the necklace and the nightgown that Pit Girl wears, I feel like that's going to be like a recurring theme that they use items from people who died, and maybe it's like to signify the next sacrifice. I don't know.
absolutely. And then we also saw the talisman, right? The unburned deer bone that Lottie gave to Van to protect them when they end up leaving. So there are a lot of symbols of protection here, either protection or, maybe a mark.
Mhm.
So hopefully we will get more clarity on that as well. Um, so this episode with the gun, we also learn Natalie's abusive father had died when a gun accidentally discharged. There was
Mhm.
that like really emotional scene between Nat, her dad, and her mom. And what kind of guilt do you think that Nat lives with, having been there and been a part of her father's death? How do you think that type of trauma is helping or hurting her out in the wilderness?
I feel like it does both. Like, because she has experience with death. So seeing people dying, like, it's not like it's not a shock to her, but like she's been through it before. But at the same time, like, she's still afraid because she, like, when she watched her dad die, like she looked terrified, like, and she looked like she felt almost partially responsible because before her dad took that gun and started playing with it, she had it in her hands, and she had it with the safe. Did she have the safety on or off? Because I know the dad, like, that's where the dad messes up. The dad is like showing her like
I think
safety's
she
on,
had it
safety's off.
on. Yes. And then he must have turned it off. And then,
And
then
then
he
when he walks
blew
down the
himself
stairs,
away.
he trips and the gun goes off.
Yep.
So if she had never been holding it and he never took it from her, then he might not have made that fatal mistake of leaving the safety off.
Whew,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And to your point, I do think that the characters who have experienced trauma out in the real world before this crash, it does serve them well to a point, because
Yeah.
they're experienced in having hard feelings and hard situations. And, a girl like Jackie, who's always kind of lived her life on a on a silver platter, that definitely speaks to that. Oh, hey, you know what? Phoenix chimed in here. There's a picture in Travis's house of adult Nat and Travis. You know what?
Mhm.
That is a really good point. We should pull a screenshot of that and look at it. So that means that they were together at some point, in their adult lives.
The picture looks like it's like more recent than not recent too.
Hmm.
So I feel like, I mean, it has to be recent enough, but just the way that like things seem between Natalie and Travis, it feels like it's been a couple years since they've been in contact with each other, because she seemed genuinely surprised that Misty found him in the first place. So he had to have disappeared from her life in one way or another for some reason.
Right. And I wonder, maybe that prompted her to go to rehab or like fall off the wagon or whatever. Like Travis disappears on her, and that's like her closest person in life,
Yeah.
because like Ty and Shauna mentioned, like they each have a family. Nat doesn't have that. So maybe that was some kind of trigger for her, that caused her to go into rehab.
Yeah.
I don't know. Um, Let's see. So, more things that happen in episode 4, Bear Down. The rest of the group finds a functional propeller aircraft, which again, we suspend disbelief and we know eventually that will take off. But even though it seems like it really shouldn't. Shauna bonds with Javi, which again, I think, if they were going to go the direction that Adam was Javi, this was something to establish that. Of course,
Yeah.
now we know that is not the direction they went. So, it just speaks to maybe Shauna having some kind of maternal instincts out there, because it doesn't seem like she has a lot of maternal instincts as she moves into adulthood.
No.
Taissa rejects an endorsement from a powerful potential donor when they try to probe into her past. That's, of course, Diane Raffleson. We have that scene where they're kind of privately together smoking cigarettes, and Diane asks Ty to confide in her about what happened. And how does she answer?
Yeah. She tells her to go fuck herself.
Yep. And it's like, I mean, it's almost like the bad one there, right? It's like she
Yes.
shifts a little bit, like she gets that look in her eye. Is she in a fugue state? I mean, at this fundraiser, we saw her already hallucinating. One of the platters went by, and
Mhm.
what did she see on one of the platters? Was it like
She saw a deer head.
a deer head? Yes.
Mhm.
And I think, did she also see a wolf that night
Yep.
there? Yes. So we know that, maybe this is a trigger. Maybe it's stress that triggers her. And maybe that's, kind of where some of this stuff is coming out. But it's a pretty key moment when she basically tells her to go fuck herself,
Yeah.
because it's more important to Ty to maintain her self-respect, to maintain the promise she made to the group, than to give in for political purposes. And for a politician, that takes a lot of strength. I feel
Yeah.
like most politicians will take the money and
Oh,
run.
yeah.
But obviously, it's something very big to protect that she does
Yeah.
not want to get out there. So, that is important. Also, in Bear Down, Shauna and Adam begin their affair. They have a crazy night. Again, kind of like reenacting some of Shauna's Miss Teen fantasies, which shows, again, her kind of like stunted growth, being
Yeah.
stuck as a teenager. And I think that's, one of her many traumas that she undergoes, is this kind of stunted growth. And then Misty has an encounter with Jessica while she's shadowing Nat and Kevin. And Misty calls Shauna to tell her that Travis is dead. Um, Interesting that Misty would call Shauna, because
Yeah.
those two clearly had not talked in some time.
Shauna seems very, very, very upset by the news too. Like, and it makes me question if it's because she like almost kills him at Doomcoming, or if there's more to it than that. Because yeah, like you held a knife to his throat, but like you were tripping on mushrooms, so I feel like a little bit of that behavior is excusable. So it makes me really think that like they form some kind of a bond with each other in some way out there, and like they have a relationship that's independent from Natalie and Travis, because Travis is allowed to have relationships with other people.
Oh, of course,
Yeah.
definitely. And he's the only guy out there too. So,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
too.
yeah. Just some other notes of dialogue from this episode that were important. We talked about, Nat and her dad. And her dad says to her at one point, "I don't know what you're so scared of, Natty. You've already got blood on your hands. We're almost there. It's been waiting for us." And that is in Nat's dream that she
Mhm.
has about her dad. Um, is the blood on her hands in reference to her father's death or something else, like from the wilderness? In the finale, Cabin Daddy says something very similar to Jackie. He says, "We've been waiting for you." And I feel like, there's got to be something related between those two lines of dialogue.
They're almost the same. So, yeah, like, we've been waiting for you. It's been waiting for us. Like, what has been waiting for you? What has been waiting for them?
100%. And then also in this episode, the bad things happened here. Nat wakes up and sees Lottie sitting up, staring in the attic. And this is one of the first, like, Lottie premonition type moments that happens when she's off her meds. So
Yeah.
that is telling.
Yeah, and Natalie responds to that by telling her, like, we buried him, like, he's gone. But that doesn't seem to have any effect on the way Lottie feels about the situation at all.
Nope, not at all. And then, we see the symbol again. Let me just pull up a picture of the symbol to remind us all what it looks like for anybody.
Somebody pointed out on Reddit recently that the first time you see the symbol, it looks like the symbol was freshly carved.
I read that and I agree. It does look freshly carved because you would think if it was from the time when the dead hunter guy was back there, like in, I don't know, 70s, 80s, whatever, like it would look a little more deteriorated. But, that is true. It does look fresh. And how is that? Who's carving it into the trees? We know that Showtime said they weren't alone out there. Is it the spirits? Is it another clan? Are they, is this other group maybe living in this alternate shelter that we see? We have the airplane door on it around some shelter that's built up. I don't know if it's around the airplane, if it was an existing shelter or a meat locker or underground where Lottie had her premonition. But boy, there is a lot to hope for and discover in season 2 there. So yes. So yeah, the symbol, it's like at that point they make the connection that the symbol carved into the tree is probably the same symbol carved into the attic floor. Lottie also says it didn't want him to leave, which is an overarching theme we see throughout because, as we know, when the girls try to leave, it doesn't work. When Laura Lee tries to fly or when they try to hike out, it does not work. It doesn't want them to leave. So, I again just can't wait to find out how they actually end up leaving. And, they're saying in like the teasers, oh, we took the darkness with us. So, even if they leave, it seems like it's always going to be inside of them, this darkness or this force. And, gosh, I wonder if there'll be a spinoff like a few years down the road where like the next group goes. They'll make it like the Wilds and they'll have like boys for the second season and then it'll get canceled. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so that brings us to episode 5, which is Blood Hive. Got a little pic of Callie up there. Would you like to read the description given by Showtime of Blood Hive, Emily?
Out in the wilderness, the girls ride the Crimson Wave and plan a dark art slumber party. Natalie and Misty tame a stallion. On Halloween night, Shauna parties like it's 1996.
Yes. Blood Hive, Travis had that good quote, he feels like I'm in a blood hive out here. All the girls are having their periods. They very smartly fashion feminine products for themselves. Of course, the only person who is not bleeding at this juncture is Shauna because she is pregnant with Jeff's baby. Of course, we didn't specifically mention it, but we know that Shauna and Jeff were having sex. Probably started when they were on a break. Jackie and Jeff were on a break, but either way, we know it started. We know they were having sex. We know Shauna also said, don't come inside me or I'm going to raise this baby to be like a trained killer and come and assassinate you or whatever. So yeah, Shauna's pregnant. Nobody knows yet. Ty will find out soon. But at this point, she's still playing it off like she's having a period. In this episode, Lottie officially runs out of her medication. Some relationships form between Ty and Van, as well as Natalie and Travis. And this is when the group holds the seance in the attic where Lottie appears to become possessed.
Yes.
Ben is also poisoned by Misty. He does not die. And in order for her to leave him alone, Ben actually decides to like play along with it and says that he has feelings for her, which I don't know if that's the best tactic with Misty, but like
No.
I feel like there's almost no winning tactic with Misty, so he chose one and he went with it, and
Yeah.
we'll see how it goes. Um, Shauna actually does tell Taissa she's pregnant because Ty kind of like figures it out. For now, Ty keeps it to herself. In 2021, Taissa finds the word spill painted on the front door of her home. Now, spill is important. We see it a few times. We also hear it. You know, Jackie
Mhm.
tells Shauna to spill when she's talking about like the first time she has sex. So this spill comes into play quite a bit, and that's the
Mhm.
first time we see it.
We also
Spill.
hear it when Taissa's at her dinner with Diane Rappelson. She's talking to an older couple, and the older couple is asking her what happened out there. And they said, like, what did you really have to resort to out there? And the old lady says, spill, spill, spill.
And I feel like there's also a couple more mentions of
There
spill.
are. Yeah.
But I mean, it figures so prevalently, you know, throughout the dialogue that, you know, and then of course, like some of it's like metaphorical, some of it's like physically spilling the blood, like actually spilling, you know, when they're hanging Pit Girl upside down and they're butchering her.
Mhm.
Which, God, by the way, I just can't get over that like opening Pit Girl scene. I mean,
I
every time I
know.
see it, I'm like, wow, can't believe they just like butcher people out there. But you know, so goes the battle of cannibalism. Okay, so Taissa also confronts Sammi after discovering the container of paint in his room. She, of course, puts it underneath his bed, which is pretty messed up, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like
Like,
she's setting him up to blame him for doing it when
and it
she
has
probably
to
did
be her in her fugue state doing this, because when she finds the paint there, like, she looks at it like, where did this come from? So she clearly has no recollection of anything. So why would she remember framing her own kid?
it. And you know, of course, Sammi denies it and says it's the lady in the tree,
I feel so
who
bad for him.
I mean, speaking of trauma, like the poor trauma that that poor young boy is going through. I mean, he didn't even experience going in the wilderness and living there for 19 months, but just being the son of Taissa who did experience that trauma,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it is really rubbing off on him. And there are some crazy things going on. There is the potential genetic thing, you know, if Sammi is Ty's biological child. We, of course, did see Ty, you know, with these hallucinations when she was a younger child at her
Yeah.
grandmother. She sees, you know, the Michael Jackson looking guy with no eyes. We see him a couple times
Hmm.
in season one. But you know, is it possible that it's just environmental and he's experiencing these things based on what he's observing and seeing, and you know, his mom being in fugue states, or maybe it's a combination. Maybe he has some kind of you know, some kind of mental disorder that Ty has, that you know, they both see something. I don't know, to be
I
determined.
I think Sammy knows more about her than she wants him to know, because where how else can you explain the drawings on his window? Like,
Right. Like, where is he seeing these things from?
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, and one of them looks mysteriously like Adam's back tattoo of the mountains, which I think is very strange, like with the lines and circles and stuff. So like,
Hmm.
where's that coming from?
Yeah.
Um, Kind of crazy. And then in this episode, Taissa ends up getting further attacked politically. The attack ads are increasing, and she actually thinks about dropping out of the Senate race and then decides not to, which is kind of crazy because she tells Simone she's going to drop out. And then, you know, like the spill visual kind of triggers her during that press conference, and she decides to stay in the race. And I think that was also not helpful for her and Simone's relationship.
She also sees the man with no eyes during her press conference. And it's like, after she sees him is when she changes her tune and she decides not to drop out of the race anymore. So I feel like seeing him like set something off in her.
God, that is so crazy. Also in this episode, it is Halloween, and Shauna attends a Halloween party with Adam and happens to see Callie there. Callie then learns about Adam. Callie, of course, is wearing Jackie's old Yellowjackets uniform, which
Yep.
kind of triggers this almost hallucination with Shauna. She thinks that she's seeing Jackie, but it turns out to, actually be her daughter. So yes, Callie does find out about Adam that night. Additionally, Natalie and Misty get access to Kevin's files, and they learn that the ritual was held where Travis was murdered. Again, like we saw Misty putting together the pieces, and it just adds this extra depth of this puzzle box situation. Like,
Mhm.
what, why, how, like, what's going on here? Eventually Nat calls Ty to her motel room, telling her what she's learned, and they call Shauna to tell her, but learn that Misty had already let her know.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Misty's watching them all through an owl hidden camera, Emily. And I don't think the owl is a coincidence either. If we look at the I do have a photo of these adult cannibal masks here somewhere, and there's an owl one, which I find to be very suspicious. Here we go.
Mhm.
Again, these are the adult cannibal council members. We have very clearly what looks like a biscuit mask. We have what looks like a Caligula mask. We have an owl. We have what looks like a goat. We have a rabbit. We have a deer. So, there is some speculation. We saw this in the season 2 teaser that perhaps these animals represent sacrifices that each one of the adults has made in the present day. So perhaps the owl could figuratively stand for the destroyed diffuser.
Mhm.
Perhaps Caligula was sacrificed, and that's why we saw Misty crying like a baby. We know that Biscuit, his head was on the altar. So could that be, Ty up there? And then, of course, we have the bunny, and then we have a deer. So
Yeah.
I've got to say, there's probably some kind of meaning with that. In terms of, we have our teen cannibal council, which we see the costumes are much more rudimentary. They are not put together nicely like those adult masks. So we did cover this very, very in depth in our cannibal council episode. So again, don't miss that. Yellowjacketshive.com. But back to this one. Again, I think the big takeaways from this episode, spill was figured in very prevalently. Oh, and then the line from Stallion 99, right? The citizen detective. The stiff in this file, I looked him up. He doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So
that made me wonder so much. Like, was he looking up John Garcia or was he looking up Travis Martinez? Because, like, we saw on Travis's license that it states that his name is John Garcia. So why would he be going off of another name if that's
it's
the information he was given?
it's bizarre, the whole John Garcia thing. So
Yeah.
hopefully we'll get more answers into the context of that. Again, they had the seance. The symbol thing is totally seancey, says Jackie. Such a Jackie line to say. And then, you know, Lottie keeps saying some different things during it, like it wants, it wants. She kept saying that. It's in you already, Lottie says to Shauna during the seance, which we can assume she was referring to Shauna being pregnant or maybe whatever's out there with them. And it begs the question, was Lottie possessed by the hunter? And how else was she speaking fluent French if she
Yeah.
was not good in French class? Like the pieces don't add up.
I love that moment when Van's like, "Well, try not to, Jackie," when she tells her like not to suck at French. It's so funny.
And then, we have Javi asking if we're all going to die out here. After he does, the knife starts making an infinity symbol or the number 8. Could that indicate only 8 of them end up surviving, or do 8 people end up dying? Shauna does say to Jessica Roberts that a bunch of her friends died, and 8 is certainly a bunch.
Yes. Yeah.
Another observation, what did Natalie say about Cabin Daddy's fingers?
She makes it's at the very beginning of the episode when they are dancing in the cabin to This Is How We Do It, and they hear a noise upstairs, and Natalie said maybe it's the dead guy's fingers trying to make their way home or something like that, like implying that like his fingers were cut off of his body, which I just thought that was like a really weird detail that they would point that out.
That is weird. With no fingers, you can't shoot a trigger. So
That's so
maybe it would have like
true.
prevented him from killing himself. I don't know, just throwing it out there.
That's so true.
Just an idea.
Yeah.
Some other lines from this episode. Lottie, aren't you cold? Jackie. And she said, yeah, actually, I thought it'd be a little bit warmer. Throughout, we hear these references to the cold and to Jackie. And of course, eventually, Jackie meets her fate being frozen to death. So just, a little bit more foreshadowing written in there. And then you had a note in here too that Callie looks at Adam like she may have seen him before. Is that possible? And is that from the Halloween party?
Yeah. It's when Shauna and Adam stumble upon Callie, and Callie tells her mom that she's on Molly, and just the look that she gives Adam, like her eyes like linger on him for a very long time, and she looks like she may have seen him before. I don't know if that's true, but it's possible.
I mean, you never know. And, we've got a comment here from Board Now. The Halloween episode is a standout episode. Love the Daria reference. Same. Shauna, of course, says anybody who knows Daria or anybody who recognizes Daria is okay. Or wait, what is it? The people who recognize Daria are cool.
The people who recognize Daria matter or something like that.
Yes. And of course, Daria was a very notable 90s cartoon. So Shauna is absolutely right. Okay, now we are on to episode 6, Saints. The Yellowjackets tangle with the birds and the bees, navigating love, lust, and DIY surgery. In the present, blackmail, bunnies, and an icy reunion. And Misty prepares for a surprised house guest. Yes. And, something interesting from this episode, we see a flashback where Lottie distracts her parents in the back seat as another car is involved in a fatal accident. And it's the same episode we see Sammi shot the same way in the back seat, where it's like some kind of premonition. So just the way that they stylistically, made those visuals match, and they're both kids in the back seat, I do think there's some correlation between that. Shauna tells Taissa the baby is Jeff's, and Shauna attempts to do her DIY abortion in this episode. And for me, that is one of the toughest scenes to watch, I think, in the entire first season. And I think they handled that very well. I think it's important that we're always conveying the message of, a woman's right to choose, no matter where you are, whether you're out in the wilderness, whether you are in regular civilization, whether you're anywhere. We should always have that choice.
Absolutely.
But just the emotion, I think, conveyed, between Shauna and Ty really deepens their bond. And I think that's why we see them remain so close, especially, as they move into adulthood.
And Shauna was willing to like jeopardize dying over letting this secret get out. Like that says so much, like about how much she she values her friendship with Jackie, but at the same time she doesn't, because she did what she did behind Jackie's back. But like, she obviously feels guilty about it because she doesn't want her to know.
I mean, she has to feel guilty, right? Like, it's when her and Jackie have that conversation, and Jackie says, like, how did this happen? And not even like her being pregnant, but like, how did you lose your virginity and not tell me, right? Like, that, I think, for Jackie was a moment that was like, and then for Shauna, I mean, again, that guilt, like, how do you carry around that guilt? Even if they were on a break when they started sleeping together, you just don't sleep with your best friend's boyfriend or recent ex-boyfriend. That's just not cool. Like, we don't do that. So not cool. But again, it establishes her guilt on the thing. Other takeaways from this episode, Lottie begins having hallucinations of a deer. She tells Laura Lee, and Laura Lee baptizes her. Of course, during that baptism, Emily, we see some strange things happen.
Yes. Well, I feel like it was equally as strange, like that she envisioned that fireball behind Laura Lee's head as it was when they show her in this vision, they show her in this, like, to me, it looks like an underground tunnel for like an industrial type complex kind of building. The tunnel that you see Lottie in, where she sees this deer and she follows the deer to this hallway, and there's a hallway that has a staircase with candles lining the staircase, and she walks up the staircase and starts lighting the candles. A part of me feels like they showed us this place because we're going to see this place factor into the storyline somehow.
Absolutely. I mean, this could be what's underneath this shelter
Yeah.
right here. I mean, it's possible. It doesn't look maybe as industrial as it does, but you never know, right? What's on the surface versus what's down below. I mean, it could be built up, and it could look any different way. So, yeah, that baptism was definitely a little premonition of what's to come, right? Like, we definitely see Laura Lee meeting her fate there. And it's kind of Lottie's way of like trying to like almost do the right thing or be under the right power on the right path. Like, it's probably scary all these things are happening. Like, she's probably having these delusions of grandeur, and maybe this is her way of trying to apply some kind of like faith or even reasoning to it. I don't
Yeah.
know. But so that was definitely a big scene. We also see Natalie and Travis kill the maggot-infested deer. So that deer that was all sick and infested, like, is that a metaphor for like the sickness of the forest and the forces at play out there? Because like that is not normal to see such a sick deer. Is it
No.
eating this like red water we end up seeing eventually? Like, what is
Mm.
causing the deer to be sick?
Yeah.
And gross also, by the way.
Yeah.
Laura Lee concludes that Lottie is having premonitions. In 2021, in episode 6, Natalie and Thaisa tell Shauna what happened to Travis. Ty's wife, Simone, makes an appointment with a child psychologist who says that Sammi has stress. Natalie and Kevin Tan, so cute together, by the way. I'd love for them to end up together. They grow feelings for one another and they have sex. Misty kidnaps Jessica. Late at night, Thaisa is revealed to be the lady in the tree. So things are
That was such a
happening.
creepy reveal too. It
Oh
was
my
so
God.
creepy.
Yes. And like with all the like lady in the tree stuff and the dirt and the bite on the hand, like the bite on the hand, I really go back and forth if it was a dog bite, Biscuit biting her, or if it was self-inflicted as a way to wake her up and get her out of that fugue state. So
Yeah.
I still cannot say for certain where that bite came from, but what do you think? Do you think it's human or dog?
I think it's the dog. I
Yeah.
think that is from when she killed the dog and the dog was fighting back and trying to like save itself.
Right. I mean, I guess it will be determined, but we do know that Biscuit is gone, so there will
Yeah.
be no more Biscuit, and hopefully Ty will not be rescuing or owning any other animals in the future.
Yeah.
So another thing from this episode, why doesn't Shauna receive a postcard? We know the postcards were not sent by Jeff because Misty receives one and not a blackmail text. When we see Shauna with the postcard, it's only because Natalie gave her hers and she pocketed it. Is it possible Shauna's being protected in some way from who is sending them? Which would be a fit if Shauna's baby did survive in the wilderness and had something to do with the postcards and was part of Lottie's group. So, Emily, do you think that she's like marked safe from the cult?
I think if her child factors into the equation, then yes. I think she's definitely like marked like off limits, like you can't touch her. And I think that would be the easiest like explanation as to why she didn't receive one. But if her child doesn't live and she's being protected, I have no idea why she's being protected.
Right. I mean, if it did live, it could be that her child is a metaphorical or physical sacrifice. Like, she
Yeah.
sacrificed her child to stay with the cult, so maybe hers was like the ultimate sacrifice, and therefore she is protected.
Yeah.
It's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
It's a possibility. Let's see. Episode 7, No Compass. As starvation looms, Thaisa leads a last-ditch effort. Amid felony schemes and all-night stakeouts, the Yellowjackets are forced to partake in small talk. So, episode 7. All right, that's right. That is when Ty cuts her hair. I think them leaving for the expedition is definitely a turning point. They're trying to get out. Thaisa, Van, Misty, Akila, and Mari all agree to go. As they depart, of course, Lottie tells something to Van. What does she say?
She goes over to the deer carcass that they burned, the sick deer, and she finds the only bone that for some reason didn't burn when they burned the deer's body, and she like makes it into a necklace and she gives it to Van, and she asks Van to wear it because she tells her that she thinks it's going to keep her safe.
Yep. And also, Lottie says that they will encounter a river of blood and
Yes.
red smoke,
Yes.
which they do. And there could be a scientific explanation. It could be some kind of, mineral issue with the water. I don't know. I don't see a lot of red rivers out there, but, again, there could be a scientific meaning for it. Or,
Mhm.
it's again some way of the forest keeping them out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they walk, they find the red colored river. Later, they are attacked by a pack of wolves. Thaisa defends the group. She uses a flare gun, but Van is severely wounded. What really gets me with the Van scene every single time is that they're like so eager to burn her. Like, she probably had a weak pulse, but I just would have given her more time making sure she was alive before
Yeah.
burning her to death. I mean, she almost burned to death in the airplane, right? Like,
Mhm.
she almost burns to death again. Like, viva la Van. She's got like 9 lives apparently. But yeah, I just think they should have like waited another minute to see if she was alive before they started burning her. My 2 cents.
One thing I always found really weird about that scene was, why didn't they take the wolf so they could eat it? Like, why? Like, they kill this animal and you have no food, so why wouldn't you capitalize on the fact that you just killed this animal that could feed you? I always just thought that was so weird.
Yeah, no, it is weird. I feel like, the adrenaline, like, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of like trauma. That was another like very traumatizing
Yeah.
scene. So I feel like they probably also just didn't have the capacity to think clearly, having seen
It's
what
true.
happened. And
Yeah.
like, I mean, imagine looking at Van's poor, like, bloody face. Oh my God. And
Mhm.
did a great sewing job. Like, her scars look really great on adult Van in the present day. So,
Yeah.
but again, she shouldn't have survived. Like, it's,
No.
the wilderness doesn't want them gone, but it doesn't necessarily want Van dead either. So I think
Yeah.
there's something to that. Other things that happen in this episode: Shauna tells Jackie she's pregnant, but she lies about who the father is. Of course, she pretends that it was Randy. But Jackie will end up putting the pieces together. She knows, she's smart.
Did did Shauna really think that Jackie would buy that it was Randy to begin with? Like,
I feel like she had no choice but to go
yeah.
that route, because I don't think that she ever could have uttered the truth to her unless she was forced and knew that there was proof. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that she could have come up with a better story either, because she didn't really have any other like dudes on the wings. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Randy would have made the most sense, but unfortunately, she got caught in a lie. Jackie probably started questioning it, and then later that night, Jackie read the diary. So,
Yep.
that's when shit really goes bad between Jackie and Shauna,
Mhm.
obviously. In 2021, Natalie, Shauna, and Ty agreed to pay the blackmailer the $50,000. After spotting the blackmailer, the group chases them. The blackmailer falls into a box of glitter during the pursuit. Misty questions Jessica, believing her to be the blackmailer. Jessica reveals she was hired by Ty to learn about the rest of the group. Back home, Shauna has sex with Adam, finally. And in the morning, they're almost caught by Jeff. And then Kevin learns that Natalie used his gun, but she does not tell him why. So a lot of things happen during episode 7, No Compass. I think the episode is named because of the wackiness of the girls trying to get out of the woods. And there's
Yeah.
literally like no compass in the world that would have gotten them out of there because they weren't meant to leave.
Yeah.
Um, The blackmailing, I think one of the funnier things from the blackmail episode was when Shauna like filled up the bag with random things because the 50 grand looked so small. I just thought that was a really nice comic relief in, such a hectic, crazy time. I loved that.
I liked that she pointed out that Jeff kept the bag that Callie made too, like said it was like part of his special keeps. And Natalie's like, oh, you're not as sentimental as your hubby is. Like, I felt like there was more to why Natalie said that too.
Absolutely, absolutely. And well, it's funny too because she kind of took a shot at Jeff a little earlier and was like, "Oh, is your husband still hawking futons or whatever?" So
Mm-hmm.
a little bit on both sides of the Jeff there.
Yeah.
Um, and then it made me really sad that Natalie kind of betrayed Kevin Tan with the gun because I really did want to see them together. But like Nat needed the gun. She used it, she did what she thought she had to do. But it's just a bummer that the poor victim here is Kevin Tan. Like she's messing with his gun. Such a nice guy, just trying to help her. And
Yeah.
Nat's just kind of using him, it's a little sad.
She goes like so extreme too, like when she like is telling him that like whatever happened between them was just sex. Like she's so harsh and she's so mean. I felt so bad for him in that moment.
Absolutely. Another line of dialogue I thought that was important from this episode was we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. So I do what I can, not just for her, for me.
Yeah.
And Thaisa says that. And it kind of further supports the theory that Natalie does do something in the wilderness that ends up being essential to their survival. And
Absolutely.
that could be why Ty agrees to pay for Nat's rehab because why
Mm-hmm.
else would she be paying for her rehab? I mean, there's got to be a reason.
Yeah. She's like indebted to her in some way.
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to, maybe they did burn the cabin down and Nat got them out. There was that line about the flamethrower too. I know we have
Mm-hmm.
it in our notes somewhere. What was it? Did Shauna say? She said, "Are you going to grab a flamethrower and just go up and down Route 9 knocking on doors?" Emily, tell us why that kind of like stuck out to you.
It stuck out to me just because that's a very like specific thing to say to somebody. Like you're going to grab a flamethrower of all things to say you're going to grab. And there's just been such like heavy speculation in the fandom that Natalie does end up like burning down the cabin to either save them from Lottie, or she does it to try to create a signal fire big enough that someone will see it and that will lead to their rescue, which I think both sound like really plausible scenarios.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because I don't think that no one's just going to stumble upon them out there after 19 months. Like it has to be something, unless a family member related to the dead cabin daddy like happens to be coming out to check on the cabin. But I don't know. I don't buy that.
Yeah.
I think that they actually legit get their way out of there.
Yeah.
On to episode 8, which is Flight of the Bumblebee. When in triage after a vicious attack, the Yellowjackets are left to figure out the best of their worst ideas, and Shauna dabbles in some light cyber stalking because apparently secretly tracking people is very popular these days. um, so the episode starts. They bring Van back to the cabin. She's conscious again. Natalie and Travis stop seeing each other when he backs out during sex. Natalie and Ben are also growing pretty close together. Natalie ends up talking to Ben and offers relationship advice, and Nat realizes he's gay, which is nice that Coach Ben can finally get that off her chest.
Yeah.
And Laura Lee makes a pretty big announcement here. What does Laura Lee say she's going to do?
Laura Lee announces that she's going to take the dead guy's plane and fly it out to get help. And
yes.
That moment was like such a defining moment in the show because up until this point, like they all viewed Coach Ben as this like authoritarian figure over them. Like they took what he said into consideration. They valued his opinion. And Laura Lee, the quietest, meekest one out of all of them, like says to him, "What are you going to do to stop me?" And what is he going to do? He has one leg. Like, what is he going to do?
He's not going to do shit, unfortunately. He's basically lost all of his control. Laura Lee flies the plane. Of course, the passenger seat with Leonard on it catches on fire. The plane explodes. Some people say maybe it hit like a barrier, like in the Truman Show, like there's like a physical barrier that won't let the plane out. But in my opinion, the plane never would have really flown anyway. So it was more
No,
just a device to show that the wilderness is keeping them there. So unfortunately,
exactly.
RIP Laura Lee, you tried. Sorry, Leonard. Thank you for your efforts. Um, in 2021, Misty stops Natalie from relapsing and reveals the hidden camera. What I loved about that scene was Misty coming in and doing all of the cocaine that was on the plate to help save Nat. Like, talk about taking one for the team. Obviously, she wasn't worried about how that would affect her. I think that amount of cocaine would probably do something, but I
I would
mean,
assume, yeah.
I would assume, but yeah, Misty again, she really takes one for the team. Misty also tells Nat that someone withdrew all the money from Travis's bank account after he died, and then the next day, Natalie tries to get some information out of Susie, one of her former coworkers, who still works at the bank. Susie refuses to cooperate, and then Natalie resorts to blackmail. Um, Ty also tells Simone about the condition in which she becomes an entirely different person at night. Fearing she'll hurt Sammi, she begs Simone to leave her alone in the house. And Shauna discovers someone took all of her journals and she finds glitter in her closet. And then, after learning that Adam is not who he says he is, Shauna goes to his apartment to question him. So,
Mhm.
lots of things happening in Flight of the Bumblebee. Of course, named because this is when Laura Lee takes off in flight. Um, when Van is coming on top of the fire after being attacked, it almost looked like there were some shadow figures standing over her, along with Misty, Mari, Ty, and Akila. Now that's bizarre, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And uh, another reason why I think she sees those figures, like, it's really hard to tell at first glance, like in that scene, because you're seeing it through Van's eyes, like when she's coming to on top of the fire, and she opens her eyes and you see them, and then she closes her eyes, and when she opens them again, it just looks like there are shadow figures, like in between each of the girls that are standing over her. Like they're like filling in the silhouettes in between each girl. And it's like it almost looks like the color that she's viewing the world in at this point is like purple, if that makes sense. Like everything looks purple. And you see these dark figures, they're black. But I also found it really interesting, like right before she really comes to, there's like this flash of green light. And it's so quick. Like you only notice it if you're paying like very close attention. But when in the finale, when she has a conversation with Thaisa about being out there, she says when she was in between, she saw something. And I take in between to mean in between life and death. And that was where she was when she was on top of that pyre, like right before they almost burned her to death.
Right. I mean, I definitely agree that in between signifies she was on the side of death and then she resurrected again. Viva la
Yeah.
Van, like once again, some other important lines from that episode. Nat discovers that there are no queens in the deck of cards. I've got to think this has some significance. It could indicate a power struggle amongst the main four because there are four queens in a deck.
Yeah.
Just some kind of metaphor about like the power struggle. The true queen hasn't emerged yet. We do think, of course, Lottie is the antler queen, but those antlers may pass amongst them. We're not sure yet, but there is some significance to the queens in the deck, I am sure.
Yeah.
When Ty drops by Shauna's house, Shauna says it's a nice surprise after 20 years. And why do they lie to Jeff about not being in contact with each other, right? So the crash was 25 years ago. They say 20 years, probably at Shauna and Jeff's wedding. But like, why are they lying?
Why lie to Jeff? Like I don't get that. Like you've been married for 20 years. Like, you know that they went through this. Like, what does it matter if he knows that you talk to each other? I just
It
don't
is.
get that.
It's weird. It's weird. I did like the conversation and like the heart to heart between Ty and Shauna.
Yeah.
I think that really again establishes like the depth of their friendship, what they went through together, and to me, they seem to have the most functional, healthy adult relationship of the adult Yellow Jackets at this point, despite each having different traumas that have made them into these people. They've found a way to come together over them
Yeah.
as kind of a shared trauma. Um, let's see. And then Ty tells Shauna about Shauna about the sleepwalking, you know, how bad it can get. And you know, it's this line could be in reference to what happened with Van, or that, you know, Ty ended up hurting somebody in a fugue state. So there's
I'm
some
leaning
meaning to
more
that.
towards the second one. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
that she's going to do something that's going to divide the group in a way, but like, it's going to happen when she's in that state. So she's not going to remember doing it. Whoever she does it to is going to remember, obviously, but then that's going to open up the whole can of worms that, like, she's even going into these states and she's going to have to be honest with the whole group about it. Because as of now, Shauna's the only one that knows.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, Ty even says, I'm different from what people expect and it scares them. And, you know, I think she scares herself too. I think
Yeah.
she scares other people and she scares herself. She's definitely got a dimension of character who, you know, despite her traumas, was able to achieve everything, check every box, and achieve everything she wanted to, despite the traumas. But, you know, it's like she said she didn't feel it when it was happening. So, yeah, she did
Mhm.
all these things, but she didn't feel it, you know, just the lasting impact of those traumas.
Yeah.
Um, finally, another line from this episode that stood out was the cabin in the Poconos. If Adam really did know who Shauna was, which I believe he did since he owned the skin in the game, then why would he ever suggest going to spend a weekend at a cabin in the Poconos? Again, we know Adam's probably a red herring and the tattoo means nothing in the cabin in the Poconos, but like, know your audience, Adam. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, she doesn't want to go to a cabin in the Poconos. Anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, on to episode 9, Doom Coming, which is 100% my favorite episode of the entire season.
Me too.
On the brink of death, the Yellow Jackets opt to throw one last rager before careening into oblivion, and increasingly paranoid Shauna struggles between keeping her cool and being Shauna. Um, so essentially, the group organizes like a homecoming party. They call it a doom coming party. Lots of things happen here. So the mushrooms inadvertently end up in the tea or soup or whatever. So everybody besides Jackie trips. Jackie and Travis have sex, despite Travis saying he still has feelings for Natalie. Ben and Natalie leave the party to talk, and Misty follows them. And after Natalie leaves to find Travis, Ben tells Misty that he's gay. As the rest of the group is consuming their hallucinogenic mushrooms, they confront Jackie at the cabin. Things get a little bit wild at this point. The group tries to rape Travis after he
Yeah.
flees when they call him a stag and they say, let's go get the stag. That was a little bit alarming.
Yeah.
After catching up, Lottie orders Shauna to slit his throat, which again, we think Shauna is the butcher of the Cannibal Council, so that makes sense. Natalie arrives and stops her. Meanwhile, in 2021, Shauna kills Adam after confirming that he's digging into her past. I don't think that he was really super digging in, and she kind of had this traumatic flashback that
Yeah.
brought her into her own state that, you know, had him kill him. And then she remembers back home, Jeff had access to the safe where she kept her journals too. She questioned him. Jeff reveals he did blackmail the group because the furniture company was going out of business. So Bianca was not someone he was having an affair with. It was someone he was borrowing money from. Oops. The woman at woman at the hotel was a loan shark. Shauna tells Jeff that she killed Adam and they discuss their options. Shauna convinces Natalie and Ty that Adam was the blackmailer, and Natalie asks Misty to dispose of the body. So, whew, lot of things happening, very Shauna centric. Shauna killed somebody. She's got everybody else involved now. Her husband is all aboard on helping her cover it up. And I think this is really going to trickle into season 2.
Yeah, for sure. There's no way that, like, the fact that he has that crazy back tattoo alone is enough reason to think that he's going to somehow factor into season 2. That's not the last we've seen of Adam. There's no way.
Definitely not the last. So the Skin in the Game book, right? It's the unauthorized story. We know Adam have it, but who wrote it? Was Allie a contributor to it? Jessica Roberts said people were making money off of it, telling the girl's story. So it is curious to know, like, whose story, who are they talking to? Were they talking to, like, the teachers, the principal, Allie, like other students? I hope we get more context on the unauthorized story.
I do too.
And then, another line from Shauna to Jeff: if it gets out that the Yellowjackets are being blackmailed because of what we did out there, this was before Jeff admitted to having read Shauna's journals. And is this in reference to the scene we see where Pit Girl, in the pilot? Is it worse than that? I feel like the cannibalism and the slaughtering will be the worst part, but that Pit Girl part was, pretty bad too.
Yeah.
A lot of bad things happened out there. And something I think that really ties up Shauna and Jeff's relationship is when Jeff says, secrets have always been a part of us. From the very beginning. Like, we see the interactions with her and Jackie's family. Like, they don't know the true breadth of what went on, but Jeff does. Jeff is still with Shauna. Jeff went from a guy that bought Shauna this tacky dress at the very beginning to a perfect dress at the end. And Jeff is not perfect. Jeff did some blackmailing, but he loves Shauna and he has had her back, despite knowing all of the crazy things she did. So,
absolutely.
I think he's grown quite a bit through the season. And then one more thing to touch on were Jackie's diaries, which I thought we'd just mention quickly. It's some of the stuff written in Jackie's diaries happened after she died, based on some of the movies and characters that we see. So the showrunners did say we're actually going to get more answers. It's going to be more of like a character plot point for Shauna, probably like dealing with the trauma of Jackie's death. Let's see. Another quote from this episode before we move on to the season finale. And of course, when we came back, we couldn't get help. We couldn't betray the team, is something Misty said to Jessica Roberts, who, of course, she's still keeping captive in her basement. And that line it kind of says something like, did they leave something in the wilderness on purpose? Is like, what else is there that people should not know about?
Just the way that she says, when we got back, we couldn't get help, just makes me think that they might have purposely left somebody behind, because couldn't get help for what? Like, you're back. What do you need help for? Like, you're rescued. So what else is there to need help for if you're rescued?
Absolutely. So I think there's definitely more to it. And the fact that they couldn't get help, again, speaks to like the depth of their trauma. Like, if they felt they couldn't get help, they couldn't get it off their chest, they had each other, but they didn't always have each other, because each one of them has their own separate lives and traumas going on as well. So with that, we will move on to the season finale, which is episode 10, which is Sick Transit, Gloria Mundi. On the night of their 25th reunion, the girls navigate damning evidence, false alibis, and a dubious attempt to heal in the wilderness. Doomcoming leaves everything off the rails as simmering resentments come to a head. Dan starts thinking that Lottie has some supernatural abilities here after Lottie kills the bear. What's one thing we know about the bear, Emily? The bear is not Javi.
Yeah.
The bear is not Javi.
Still can't believe people actually like really bought into that.
I know. Crazy. And Javi is missing. After Doomcoming, Shauna tells Javi to run. He is nowhere to be found. Jackie tells the group that Jeff was, in fact, cheating on her with Shauna. and she confronts the group for hurting Travis as well. Jackie was, not on mushrooms, and she very clearly saw everything that went down, including the clear sex that she had with Travis.
Yes.
Um, Jackie decides to sleep outside that night because her and Shauna kind of, got into it. They had an altercation, and it really culminated into some very bad things. I mean, she sleeps outside, and of course, it's the first night it snows, and she dies. I mean, one of the
Yeah.
last scenes we see from the season is frozen Jackie, Shauna's reaction, in loving memory of Jackie. Oh my goodness. Again, she had quite the downfall from the beginning, where she was the queen with all of the influence, and
Mhm.
they essentially pushed her out. She did not buy into the seance, to giving thanks for the things that they were able to get, and that ultimately led to her downfall.
Yeah.
Additionally, Lottie, Misty, and Van offer the bear's heart as a tribute to the wilderness. This is one of the final images we see towards the end. Lottie holding up that heart. And then in 2021, Shauna, Ty, Natalie, and Misty clean up the murder scene. Misty loved helping with that, but unfortunately, she did not realize Adam had a tattoo on his torso. She says torsos
Yeah.
are useless, but that is going to come back into play. She, of course, disposed of his head and arms and legs, feet in the crematorium, but they buried the torso, and I think that's definitely going to come back to haunt them.
It has
Um,
to.
Oh my God, it absolutely has to. And, in one of the great scenes of season one, I love the 25th reunion. I
Mhm.
love Offspring's Come Out and Play is playing
Yeah.
as the girls walk in. They attend the reunion. Shauna confronts Jeff's friend Randy, who knows about the blackmail and threatens to kill him if he tells anybody. Callie learns of Adam's disappearance on the news. Simone makes a discovery in her basement, which is the altar of Biscuit's decapitated head, Sammy's doll, and what appears to be a human heart. Note the doll Manny only has one eye.
Mhm.
We note some candles there. We've got the symbol, very seancey. In this episode, Misty also poisons Jessica in her cigarettes, but first gave her the option to not smoke the cigarettes. So she did give her a chance. Jessica Roberts, we see crashed on the side of the road. We assume she's dead. Um, Taissa wins the Senate race. And then at the end, a mysterious group kidnaps Natalie. Susie tells Natalie in a voicemail that Lottie emptied Travis's bank account. So we end on, kind of this cliffhanger.
Mhm.
Oh, and then let's not forget Jackie's death dream when we see everybody
Yeah.
says that we've been waiting for you, Jackie, which is interesting. And I hear we should be getting more of Cabin Daddy's backstory in season 2. So cannot wait for that.
I'm so excited for that.
Oh my gosh, it's going to be so good. Let's see. So some final thoughts on the finale. We need to wrap it up here. We actually have a call with Co-Ed Naked in a couple minutes. So let's wrap it up. Let's see. You noted in the notes one of Misty's coworkers at the beginning of this episode looks exactly like one of Nat's kidnappers.
Mhm.
That could be a possibility, maybe, to keep tabs on her.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible that Lottie somehow had members of her cult infiltrate the other adult Yellowjackets' lives to keep tabs on them so she knew what they were doing.
Absolutely. Another line. What do you want? A blood oath from me? Natalie says to Misty about attending the reunion. And that is reminiscent of the teaser visual where we see somebody writing in blood, I heart you, on somebody's arm. Could
Yes.
this be another type of ritual they're creating? Perhaps it could be.
Mhm. Definitely.
And I think most importantly, after this episode, we discovered that Lottie Matthews is alive. We are going to see adult Lottie, who's of course played by Simone Kessell. We are also going to see adult Van, played by Lauren Ambrose. Cannot wait to see her. Other new characters that they have introduced, we will have Crystal. We will also have Nicole Maines, Francois Arnaud, and Nia Zendaya in recurring roles. So, again, Francois is going to play Paul, Ben's boyfriend. Nicole Maines is going to play Lisa, who's an associate of Lottie's. And Nia Zendaya is going to take over Akila's role.
Mm-hmm.
So exciting things. Oh, and then let's not forget Elijah Wood, Citizen Detective Walter. Showtime just put out a really cute video with Elijah Wood, so check it out on their socials. It was really cute. I love to hear him talking and excited about the show. Oh my goodness. We saw on Instagram the adult Yellowjackets wrapped. They are all looking very nice. I see some purple there. Note. Could be important. The teens all finished shooting as well. So filming is done. Now they are editing. Now we can look on to season 2. Season 2, episode 1 will be directed by Daisy von Scherler-Mayer, who also directed Doom Coming.
Oh, and yes.
Yes, she has a lot of other amazing shows under her belt, including A Million Little Things, For the People, Mad Men, Nurse Jackie, Shameless, Orange is the New Black, House of Lies, Ray Donovan, The Walking Dead. She's got quite a resume.
Yeah.
And because Doom Coming was one of my favorite episodes, I imagine that will be another one of them. So yeah, I cannot wait for season 2. Oh my goodness. Well, look, it's about the 2-hour mark. We told ourselves we were going to do like an hour and a half, but we knew that we might go over. So we did our best to stay on track, recap the most important plot points. I think the biggest mysteries we're going to be looking ahead for in season 2. Where's Javi? What happened to Shauna's baby? Who sent the postcards? What's the deal with the symbol or supernatural? They weren't alone out there. Who was with them? Was it a force? Was it a group? How culty is Lottie? Exactly. How culty on a scale of 1 to 10? We'll see. What's up with Van? What's she doing? Whose side is she on? And what will happen with Adam's murder? Are they going to get caught? Who's going to go to jail? Are they going to be able to get out of it? There are so many mysteries to be determined. If we missed any important plot points, we encourage you to please drop your thoughts in the comments. We will be on and replying at some point. So we'd like to keep the dialogue open. There's nothing more we love than speculating and spilling with the Yellowjackets fandom. We love being here. Be sure to listen and watch our most recent episodes. You can get all of the links at yellowjacketshive.com. We have some very exciting things coming up, including Teen Travis, Kevin, joining us on February 27th. We're going to have another Hive Hangout. We have our Co-Ed Naked collaboration coming up and are in talks with some other cast members to be joining us. So please buzz into the Hive. Again, we will also be having our Hive After Dark after show immediately following new Yellowjackets season 2 episodes. That will start. Oh my God, I know. It starts March 26th. It's going to be so much fun. Again, if you want to join, email us yellowjacketshive@gmail.com. And more than anything, thank you for joining us for this recap. We hope we did it justice.
Yeah, there was a lot to cover, so I hope we got it all.
Absolutely. With that, we are going to hop off and go hop on a call with Co-Ed Naked right now. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Yes, until we spill again.